trying to guess. They had no way of knowing when he was born. Commissioned as a surveyor of the District of Columbia in 1789. Appearance as an almanac maker in 1791 and chief surveyor and designer of the District of Columbia. 1793 almanac was the most widely read book in the colonies. Activity before the first almanac, 1774, 1775. The only thing they have about him is transactions at Ellicott Mills store. No more transactions until 1795 to 1796. Then in 1799, 1800s, etc. But the bad thing about this is, when you study and you investigate, if the man allegedly, they say he was born in 1732, that means he lived almost 60 years and you ain't hear nothing about him. All of a sudden he just pops up and he gonna make almanacs and talk to Thomas Jefferson anytime he get ready, talk to George Washington anytime he get ready. Where was he at before then? How did he get access to these people? Who was it? That's you. That's just like you getting up, not saying you're not important, but walking up into the White House like, hey George, what's going on? I want to sit down and talk to you for a minute. Now about what's going on in Iraq, this is what we need to do. I got the layout and the plans. Just send me over there. Oh wait, go right ahead. It don't happen like that in society. So some kind of way they knew who he was. How? Who was he? Next slide. Who was this man? Because they're not telling us the truth about who he was. So some of the books that you have is a part of the research that we have done. Now one of the things I did want to show you from the life of Charles Thompson is to prove to you that they paid tribute to the so-called Indios, whose real names they gave as Negroes, but whose real names are Moors, or Aboriginal peoples. It's in this writing. I'm going to read it towards the end to let you know they paid tribute on both sides. Here, domestically, they paid tribute. And if they didn't pay tribute, know what we did? Come on over here. We got some of your citizens. We're going to hold them until you get this money up. Because you're on our land. You're on rent. You ain't paying your rent. When you pay your rent, we'll give them back. And that's what happened. They kept them captive. And you're going to hurt them. You're going to feed them and teach them right. They probably come back 10 times better. Next slide. Bannaker as Moses in Liberty Kids. You ever seen this cartoon? Liberty Kids is a cartoon that comes on Sundays with Benjamin Franklin. His three little children who were learning about American history, and the secret man who's named Moses, who's taking them around and showing them all about American history. But the interesting thing is that there's a book out that's called Moses 72 by Cecil Curry. And this book is about Benjamin Franklin being a spy, a secret name for Benjamin Franklin, who is allegedly under this code name Moses 72 as a secret plot to take the template of the American Republic and ship it to all of the other governments of the world. Now what's interesting about it is that Moses in 72, special number in Moorish cosmology and special number in the freeing of our people, emancipation. Moses represents emancipation. All right? Next slide. Benjamin Franklin and Bannaker. Some key points, and we're going to get through this real quick, a few more minutes. Both were self-taught scientists, inventors, and astronomers, and farmers. Both were clockmakers. Both published almanacs in Philadelphia. Both were abolitionists in Philadelphia. Both were abolitionists in Philadelphia. Franklin, ambassador to France, Bannaker sent his almanacs to France via Jefferson and connected to France through his connection to Pierre L'Enfant, the first hired architect and designer of Washington, D.C. Franklin was the governor of the Sons of St. Tammany, a secret society who honored Chief Tammany of the Abenaki. Bannaker, whose name was Bannaker, was from Bannaker Springs. Abenaki were the ones who gave the Americans the three-branch system of government. Both were musicians and played the violin and the harp. Both had their houses demolished after their alleged deaths. They never met each other though. Whoa. So you mean to tell me Bannaker met George Washington, Thomas Rush, Thomas Jefferson, and all these other people around, but he never had a chance to meet Benjamin Franklin? So what's going on? Something is going on. I don't posture that they're the same people. I just posture that somebody wanted to hide the history because they don't want you to know, to understand the concepts of the American doctrine and the things that have been attributed mostly to Benjamin Franklin as the true founding father are actually tied up into Bannaker and his lineage, which we're going to go over. Keep going. Next slide. This is Bannaker's almanac depicting the zodiacs as they tie to the body. Next slide. Who was Bannaker? Here we go. Bannaker was a Choctaw lineage through his mother's side. Now, how do I know that? Because we did a search. His mother's last name was Morton. And if you go to the Dawes rolls are the rolls that they keep on the Native American family names from the late 1800s all the way up to the 1900s. Some of your families are on the Dawes rolls. But the name Morton comes up on the Dawes rolls as belonging to the Choctaw lineage. Okay? That's one. And we're going to show you even further. Not only that, he had a brother-in-law named Greenberry Morton. And it's in the book on the Benjamin Bannaker homesteads. You're going to read it. This is why they were free. Because they were indigenous. All right? So the Morton family name goes back to the Dawes rolls in the indigenous name of Choctaw. And you see the name Morton, which most of their names come from Algonquian and Gaelic, Moratan.
I've been to the Benjamin Bannaker estate. They said that their name was Molly.
Molly Welsh, she was white and she was from, it's a big lie. We're about to show you from the earliest records that it was a lie.
And they said his father was a Dogon prince.
Yep.
And pretty much that's why he got all his sciences.
Right. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. Benjamin Bannaker of the Choctaw. I pulled this off of Ancestry.com. Benjamin Benneker. Indemnity for losses under the Choctaw Treaty. Claims on lands under Benjamin Bannaker's name on Ancestry.com under the Choctaw Treaty. His mother's name goes back to Choctaw. So his matrilineal history is Choctaw. The reason why that's important is because the Choctaw or Washita or Choctaw are the oldest indigenous tribe in the Americas. And when you go back to their history is so expansive, I can't even go over it. This stuff goes all the way back to bloodlines to Akhenaten and King Tut. You wouldn't believe it. Father was not a slave. Why? Because there's no records of it. Anytime they tell you somebody something, they ought to have a record of it. Ain't no records. His parents were free because they knew their Choctaw and Moorish nationality. The natives and the Moors taught the Europeans. You must understand that. Your ancestors, these black people, taught Europeans. We're going to go through it some more. Next slide. So when you see this, you better understand what they're saying to each other. That's what this means. Okay? Now there's different talks about who this is. Some people say it's Prince Hall, Prince Whipple, Bannaker. I think they're all the same person. Personally. Next slide. A close-up so you can see the turban. Next slide. Same picture. I just want you to get a remembrance in your mind. Prince Whipple, who signed the Declaration of Independence. Next slide. There you go again. As the brother said, with a turban on. You see him. This picture is 200, almost 200 years old, 190-something years old. At that time, why would they depict this? Next slide. Of course, the Battle of Bunker Hill. Bunker Hill. Now maybe they couldn't pronounce his name. Maybe Benjamin Bunker. I got stuff from Ancestry.com on Benjamin Bunker, but the thing that's important about Bunker Hill is that this is a hill or a mound right now, which I don't have a picture, that they have a giant obelisk on. Whenever they put that obelisk there, you better know that some Masons have a secret there, that represents our Tekken, or obelisk, or the phallus of Osiris, but they have adopted it. All right. So when you see the Battle of Bunker Hill, you know there's some real history back there. Next slide. This is the Fairmont. This is Center City, Philadelphia, where you have City Hall at. And this is the first waterworks station. And the reason why this is built because Philadelphia was hit with yellow fever. and all the Caucasians was running up to Germantown at that time outside of the Philadelphia jurisdiction. You know what happened? The black people stayed and cured everybody. Not only that, Bannaker put the cure for yellow fever in his 1795 almanac. And it's my belief that he was the builder of the waterworks station at Fairmount, the designer for Fairmount Waterworks, and the waterworks station that was at Center City Hall, in order to create a sewer system because they didn't have one to save the people. Now let's go to the next slide and let's see. This is what they put in that same place, this Zodiac. Another communication. Next slide. This is a picture of the waterworks station again, who they said was designed by Benjamin Latrobe, or Benjamin Latrobe, the triangle. And that place is inside of a triangle. We're about to walk through it. Next slide. This is a short account of the malignant fever, or yellow fever, lately prevalent in Philadelphia, with a statement of the proceedings that took place on the subject, can't read that, in parts of the United States. This is by Matthew Carey. He was saying that the black people, after these people ran out, was selling their techniques for healing the yellow fever and cheating the people. That's why he wrote this. But meanwhile, George Washington, all these people, they ran up Germantown to get out of town because they couldn't deal with it. Why? Because they weren't immune to it. That's why the black people stayed. And what I'm going to show you is Richard Allen and Absalom Jones wrote back and contradicted what this man stated so that they could save the name of our people. Next slide. A narrative of the proceedings of the black people during the late awful calamity in Philadelphia in the year 1791, and a refutation of the censures that were made by Matthew Carey. And this was by Absalom Jones and Richard Allen. You see the RA and the AJ. So this is them using the science of herbs and other things to heal the people in Philadelphia when everybody else ran out. This is what was going on in the city. And they want to tell you you was just a bunch of slaves. Next slide. Richard Allen's response is here to Matthew Carey. It's long, we don't have to read it, but he made a response. Next slide. Benjamin Rush, who worked with Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, who wrote in Bannaker's almanacs, who was a doctor. Benjamin Rush and Bannaker were well-known friends. Rush published in Bannaker's almanac in 1793, recommending a peace officer. Bannaker was to be the head of the Department of a Peace Office for the United States of America to stop the wars between the natives and the Americans, so-called Americans. Bannaker gave Rush knowledge of how to treat yellow fever. It's in his 1795 almanac. I wasn't able to get a copy. I wanted to get the actual copy so you could see the remedy that he was given for the yellow fever. Next slide. Now, they were doing something called bloodletting. You know what bloodletting is? What? Let the poison out. Right, exactly. And they were doing, I believe they were doing transfusions from reading some other stuff, giving them their blood. That's why they stayed, so they can heal some of these people who were dying from these things. You can barely see this. This is just commentary about Benjamin Rush and Benjamin Bannaker. Next slide. Bannaker reports 4,000 deaths from the yellow fever in 1795. He gives treatments for it, and Bannaker, or Benjamin Latrobe, which means Benjamin the Triangle, makes plans for the Fairmount Waterworks after designing the waterworks station at City Hall and Fairmount Waterworks. Now, why am I saying this? Because in European history in America, Philadelphia is the first modern city. It's the first city to have sewer systems, design, everything that happened in Philadelphia, the template was taken to every other part. Now, if Bannaker is responsible for that, and he is responsible for DC and the layout of Philadelphia, you're looking at modern design and architecture started by a black man who has not been given the credit. Not only that, we know he laid out Washington, D.C. If in fact that they use a pseudonym, Latrobe, to hide him, that means he was an architect. He planned the design of the White House. He planned the design of the Capitol building. He planned the design of other buildings that were in so-called Greek and Gothic architecture that America had no knowledge of. But you know what Greek and Gothic architecture is a code name for? Moorish architecture. The architecture that you see in Spain, is the one that you see in these old churches. so-called Gothic. That's Moorish architecture. They didn't know how to build like that. We taught them. There was nobody else to teach them. Next slide. Benjamin Bannaker's accomplice made under the pseudo name Benjamin Latrobe. Designed the Bank of Pennsylvania, which was burnt down, just like his house. Everything he built, they burned it down. Bannaker brought Moorish architecture to the United States under the New Republic under the pseudo names Greek and Gothic architectural design. Designed the Capitol in Washington. Of course, he did the survey, they give him credit for that. And designed the waterworks site. Now the place of the capital of Philadelphia. Right there at City Hall, that used to be a waterworks station, which we showed you the pictures of. All right? UPenn Medical School designed it. The White House renovation done under Thomas Jefferson's administration, which is giving credit to Benjamin Latrobe. Bannaker designed the Capitol, and it was burned down in 1812 in the War 1812. So what you're looking at is not even the original Capitol. His son, I'm saying that this is possibly his son, J.H. Latrobe, died in New Orleans. And most people attempt to connect his son's body as his body in New Orleans at St. Louis Cemetery. So what they told you in history, this is what they told us in history. That this man named Benjamin Latrobe came and designed all the stuff, and he went to New Orleans and died, and his son died in the very same graveyard. His son's name is John H. B. Latrobe. Look at this right here. This is an 1845 document I'm about to show you. This is a memoir of Benjamin Bannaker, read before the Maryland Historical Society at the monthly meeting, May 1st, 1845, by who? John H. B. Latrobe. Why is John H. B. Latrobe in 1845 writing a memoir of a book to Benjamin Bannaker? And he is the one that I found out all this history about the Morton family and other things. And what happened significantly is that after he wrote that, other people started writing to say that he was wrong and he didn't know Bannaker's history and all of that. This is how they hide the information, brothers and sisters. They don't want you to know who he is. Now check this out. Next slide. I found a picture. This is John H. B. Latrobe. Don't he look like a mulatto? That might be his son. We got to do some more investigation. I don't know what Benjamin Bannaker was doing. He might have been slipping around with some white girls. But this is Latrobe who wrote this memoir to Benjamin Bannaker. Keep that here too. Y'all keep that. Because y'all need that literature. Maybe we can find it, but it was hard for me to find that. All right? So, next slide. This is what D.C. and Philadelphia are laid out on, the stars. Now, these are three stars, Arcturus, Spica, and Regulus. How do you know that the layout was not remembered by no Pierre L'Enfant? He remembered Pierre L'Enfant's layouts and then he just came and did it. No. Pierre L'Enfant never wrote no almanacs, and the only almanacs that you find, the stars on the ephemeris, Regulus, Arcturus, Spica, and Sirius is Benjamin Bannaker's almanacs. No other almanacs. That's proof positive right there that the boy was a superb astronomer dealing with the doggone science, and he laid out Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., the first two capitals of the United States of America, based on ancient Moorish cosmology. That's what happened. That's why they're ruling right now, because the energy that they laid themselves out on, that we use as an ancient science to map out a particular building based on the heavens, invites that energy down into the geometry, compass and square, G, the geometry of your living conditions. That's why they're ruling in that area right now. Next slide. This is a depiction of those same stars, and you see right here, this will be the Capitol building. Also in Philadelphia, this will be City Hall. You go up what? Ben Franklin Parkway or Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C., and you hit the White House. In Philadelphia, you hit Fairmount, which is now the Philadelphia Museum of Art on top of that old mound. And you come down, and you hit the obelisk in Washington, D.C., and in Philadelphia, you're right in the middle of the Schuylkill with 30th Street Station and the post office.
Very quick, in Washington, D.C., I went to the Scottish Rite Temple. Right
on
on the
16th Street.
On the right hand side, it says the light came from the east. On the left hand side, it says the law comes out of the west.
That's right. That's right. And that Scarlet Trade Temple is right on this meridian line above the White House on 16th Street. When you come down 16th Street, you got all these temples. You come down, you get the White House in the office. All right. Next slide. Now that's a vortex. I know it is because I did a ritual there before and something happened. All right. That is a spiritual vortex, which our ancestors understood the earth had certain points, like your body, like pressure points. The earth has that same science or body where certain places emit certain levels of energy at a higher velocity. Banneker's riddle. The design of Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia is really a clock. You can see the summer solstice at the summer solstice, the winter solstice, the autumnal equinox, and the vernal equinox, certain things going on because it was made like a calendar. Okay? Now, we're not going to go into all of that, but we need to understand that Benjamin Bannaker laid out those surveys like our ancestors always do. They always leave communications for us. He saw the decline of our people during that time period in slavery. But this man was a part of the indigenous heritage of America that we hold and our ancient African legacy of Moorish science that we hold. And he represents something great. This is why we have to continue and study his history to find out what he was communicating. Because what he really was is, turn back to your mothers and your fathers. You'll have success. Okay, next slide. So that's it. Next slide. I don't think there's any more. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. We just had some other stuff here, but we're not going to go over that. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I think that's, you just have some extra stuff. Keep going. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, we had a lot of extra stuff. But we're going to close out now because I know it's getting late and we don't want to stay here too long. But I do want to do one thing, which I got a secret way to do it, to get all the copies of Benjamin Bannaker's almanacs. I'm going to bring them here so y'all can have them. Because he talks about Sultan Muhammad. He talks about the Quran in his almanacs. He talks about all kind of stuff, and they don't want you to get that. And if they sell it online, they're selling it for $300. Yep, exactly. In his almanacs. He talks about the Muslim world and everything. Okay? So this man knew a lot of things. And they're not going to tell us this history. Because they want us to think that we were some bootlicking people who never stood up, never fought, wasn't intelligent, etc. No, we fought back, we whooped, we kicked butt, and now we're getting our butt kicked because we following somebody else's ancestry, somebody else's history. So in order for us to unite, we just got to take one step at a time. And the one step at a time is quit reading books from white people. Read some of your own ancestors' information. Quit going and thinking that you're going to go to Temple and UPenn, even if you do go and become great and lofty in their society and never set up or work to establish your own autonomy. Because you have the right to right now. You have a right to your own nationality. If somebody tries to take it away from you, it's an act of genocide. So you need to learn how to politically, how to historically, how to educationally, how to health-wise, to live the life of our ancestors. Because that's the only thing that's going to gradually bring us back. We can't eat hog mog and say we're going to solve our problems. We can't eat livers and chicken wings every day and say we want to be a spiritual people. We got to slowly wean ourselves off of the old slave diet and all other things that we're doing. And it's a process, but we can do it. I'm done.
All right.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Yes, sir. Wait, we got some questions. I wanted to make sure we
what was the name? The writings you said from 1492 to the early 1500s. What were they called?
The Jesuit letters.
How do you?
Jesuit. Jesuit letters were the letters of the Spanish missionaries of the Catholic Church.
Like Jesuit?
Yeah, Jesuit.
Okay.
I said Jesuit, but I guess it's Jesuit. Probably
Jesuit letters. All right.
And there's a lot of other things that we had here, but we got over most of the information. I just wanted y'all to get a good view of Ben Bay so you'll know who he was. And we just got to keep studying. Yes, go ahead, brother.
Why was he assisting George Washington so much?
Because that was the mode of the time. They was taking over. It was taking over. It was enslaving our people here. It was stealing land because that's what they do. Now, his position, in my opinion, being next to all of these people, because he was a Rosicrucian and a Mason, and he was, in those other areas, I think that our people were working towards trying to find a way to preserve their sciences. And one of the ways they was doing it was initiating these people into our Masonic sciences. Now, when you get into the history of Prince Hall and his connection to them, you saw things going on like that, but you have to remember at this time our people were taking a sharp decline. So, I mean, I guess the moral explanation for trying to be there and help them out, we have to do more research, but the point was our people were in a funny kind of situation. I can explain it like this. Right now, I have a nationality. I don't pay taxes. I don't do none of this stuff that so-called common people do. And I try to teach people to learn to do it in a way that is not going to get you locked up, is responsible, etc. So in a way, I'm an abolitionist trying to free slaves right now. One of the things that happens with our perception is we look back on slavery as if we're looking back on slaves, but we're slaves right now. We bonded 100%. Birth certificate, social security card, they trading on our names, etc., etc., etc. So that with that perception, we can see how somebody like Benjamin Bannaker could be in the position that he was in, trying to fight for our people, but yet in amongst the aristocracy, still interfacing with them. A lot of times what happens to us is we see one of our people interfacing with them and we want to call them a sellout like we do Barack Obama. Or he a part of the Council on Foreign Relations. We do all of those things, but we don't know that man. You know what I mean? And we don't know what his objectives are. Just because he's next to white people, he might be one of us up there trying to help us out. And we need to think before we start just running with the thing saying he all with them. I'm not saying he's with us, I'm not saying he's not, but I'm saying think about it. Because you never know who somebody is.
Any more questions?
Comment.
Comment.
I just wanted to let you know something I noticed before I forget. I was down City Hall, in the center, where they have
Right,
the astrology.
Square.
Okay, well, there's a white girl down there painting little blacks and white squares. It's like covered it up except for the astrology signs.
Right.
Laying down on the ground, painting, just covering all that up. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is about on the south side of City Hall. I don't know if you recall, but the brother told me, I hadn't recalled, and at my age I should have. But they had figures of Moors on the south side of City Hall.
Yeah, I got pictures of them.
Right
on top, Egyptian priests, Moors.
They took all that down.
Yeah, they took it down. I still got those pictures though.
I'd love to see those pictures. They
Yeah.
took all that down. The
I
brother
got those
told me,
pictures,
I
but
was
they
like,
weren't gonna do that.
wow, man. Yeah.